I want to introduce Wendy. She's going to speak for a few minutes, and then she's going to lead a moment of silence in tribute of our beautiful people that we've lost. Wendy McEntyre is a public safety advocate, and she's the founder of Jared's Law. It's a nonprofit watchdog group who advocates for the rights of people who seek treatment. Wendy was successful in sponsoring a comprehensive bill to overhaul the Department of Healthcare Services. AB 920 is now called Jared's Law. And then a moment of silence after Wendy speaks will conclude the memorial and the gathering. And I'll thank you now for coming here and being part of this, and we'll continue to grow our community of healing. Thank you, Wendy.
A plane crashed yesterday, carrying 350 people. A plane crashed today, and another. A plane crashed yesterday, carrying 350 people. A plane crashed today, and another will crash tomorrow. We're losing an entire generation of people. Don't get it twisted. These pharmaceutical companies are a joke. Let me frame this for you. What we are actually talking about is a mass genocide that was for profit. This isn't about a penalty. This isn't about a nuisance. This isn't about pollution that needs to be abated. These are real lives. These are real families. There are entire towns and communities that were destroyed by the actions of these companies. We now know that more people are dying because of the actions of these companies than died in the Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Korean War combined. So we have to start calling it for what it is. It was a systematic, coordinated attack on American families, and yes, we do need to be going after them for every single dollar. The American taxpayer should not be paying for the mess that was created. Let's first start off with the Purdue offer of $12 billion. It doesn't even scratch the surface. The problem with the $12 billion settlement is that it creates an illusion of closure around this. There is no closure for families of loss. There is no closure for people who are struggling on the streets, who have lost decades of their lives because they couldn't access services. $12 billion doesn't get us anywhere as close to where we need to be. The $572 million that's coming out of Oklahoma, according to the judge in his verdict, is only to pay for 1 year of abatement, 1 year of services for that state. What are we going to do for years 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? People need access to life-saving critical care support now. There are people who are literally dying on the streets because they can't get into treatment. They can't get the harm reduction services that are evidence-based to keep them alive until they find recovery. They can't access recovery support services. This is a crime in and of itself, and we're not getting enough money to pay for these services. The pharmaceutical companies have raised havoc on our communities for their profit. We also can't forget the role that the federal government has played in kind of ignoring this crisis. The role the FDA has played, the role the DEA has played. This was a coordinated attack on all levels in our communities, so yes, we need billions of dollars. I would go as far as to say hundreds of billions of dollars. So Purdue Pharma and their $12 billion settlement offer, I say we should say no thank you, we will see you in court. It is not just pharma companies that are responsible. They are a part of a larger equation. But step 2, which is actually equally, if not more important than step 1 in getting the money, is how we're going to spend it. We could get $1 trillion out of pharmaceutical companies, but if we're not spending that money where it needs to be spent, then all of the work that I have done, all of the work that recovery advocates have done, families of loss have done, from all around this country to hold these drug manufacturers and distributors accountable, goes to complete waste, and we actually risk that happening. Remember the tobacco settlements from the 90s? That's a great case study on how this money can be mismanaged and squandered. If Oklahoma's settlement and Purdue's offer settlement is any guide to what's going to happen next, then it looks like they're going to fumble the ball big time. Oklahoma's plan of putting that money into a shiny new university research center that's going to focus on addiction research, where we may not see the outcomes for years to come, is not going to help. There are people that need help right now. There are infrastructures in place on the community level that support these needs immediately, and we've got to get this money to them. We've got to start treating this like the public health emergency that it is. The government needs to realize that this is much larger than an opioid crisis. It's frustrating to hear that the president and members of Congress are addressing this in a silo as an opioid crisis and offering solutions specific to opioids. What's going to happen when the next big drug epidemic balloons, which is actually happening right now under the surface? We have a booming methamphetamine crisis, a booming cocaine and benzodiazepine crisis that's also rearing its ugly head. In Oklahoma, where they just got $572 million settlement, more people actually died last year from methamphetamines than died from opioids. So we need to be looking at building an infrastructure that supports recovery from all substances. We need a recovery-oriented system, a wraparound behavioral health support system, and start treating this like an addiction and not just an opioid crisis. I've seen some lucky people get the best help from county-run programs that are funded by Medicaid. It is a clear path to access treatment because of public services. Those services should not be about luck. Those services should be the norm in this country. Every single American should have equitable access to care, and it is a crime that that's not happening in the midst of the worst public health emergency crisis we have seen in a generation. This can happen to anybody, don't mistake yourself. Addiction doesn't happen because someone wrote a script of pain medication. These are deep-rooted issues, behavioral issues, deep-rooted trauma, mental health care that we need to be wrapping around when talking about this issue. It just doesn't happen in a vacuum. And that's what I hope policymakers understand when they start to spend the settlement verdict money, and that we set up an infrastructure in this country that supports a continuum of recovery, that supports people in treatment, that supports people and supports mental health. The system is currently broken, and that is why over 200 Americans a day are dying. And if you include alcohol and other drugs, that is over 350 people dying per day. That number will keep skyrocketing until we get to the root cause and start from scratch. We've got to turn this whole thing upon its head and start over because the system is broken. And now I would like to hold a moment of silence for all of our loved ones and everybody else who have lost their battle with addiction. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.